All right, welcome back. We got our weekly stock market update. Interesting last couple of weeks in the market. We had a pullback a couple of weeks ago, and this week the market did push back. The S&P is near its all-time highs, and the Nasdaq is still up 30% year to date. We had a little bit of volatility the last couple of weeks, but the VIX is still pretty low, pretty calm here at 15. We did have oil spike a little bit, but it's only up 4% on the week at 71. So we'll take it for the Iran volatility news that we got with the ceasefire being over, but the market not really reacting to some of the headlines. So if you saw the headlines, it looked bad. We're back to battling it out, but the markets didn't really react to that too much. But we are seeing an interesting rotation. We're seeing some of the AI build-out trade. It's cooling off a little bit. So names like Bloom Energy, Marvell, Supermicro, and the RAM names like Micron, those are cooling off a little bit. But we'll look at some of the charts here in a moment. It's just a small little dip after a rip-roaring start to the year. So it's healthy for these names to cool off a little bit, people to take profits. And those profits are rotating back into some of the Mag 7 names like Meta, a little bit of move on Microsoft, Google stabilizing. So we're starting to see those big tech companies get a little bit of buying, and that's what's pushing the market back up as well. So it's good to see, money kind of bounce back and forth, and these names were due for a little bit of a pullback. And some of these names do look much more appealing on the pullback because they've just been going straight up and to the right. So one thing I want to talk about is last week we did have a NVIDIA and Palantir partnership when it comes to open source AI. So we're seeing another narrative shift on AI, and some of the luster is coming out of these big AI names like ChatGPT and Claude, just because these big companies are tired of paying for API pricing and then also giving them all their data, and their models are learning from the work that these big companies are doing. So we'll just use JP Morgan, for example. JP Morgan, let's say they're using Claude. It's very expensive for them to use Claude and be paid per token using the API. And on top of that, Claude is being able to train their future models on the work that JP Morgan is doing. And in sense, they're able to kind of take their trade secrets and it betters their model. And then when their competitor goes to use the model on a similar problem, it can recommend the solution that JP Morgan came up with while using their model. So with that being said, it's not like these companies are necessarily stealing their data, but it's just because using the model, it's training their future models to come. And so they're kind of getting the inside secret sauce on the business, and these companies aren't going to want to do that. So what I think we're going to be seeing a lot more is these big companies hosting and making their own models and hosting them on local hardware on site. So instead of running a ChatGPT model or a Claude model, it goes off to Amazon Web Services in the cloud, and then that query comes back to JP Morgan Chase. What they're going to do is they're going to set up their own servers in their building. They're going to run local models from NVIDIA or Meta, and then they're going to use a company like Palantir or someone else to put a harness on top of that model so that none of the trade secrets get out anywhere. It's all done in-house. So it's just kind of an interesting shift because the last 10, 15 years, everything has been off premises, off prem, and gone into the cloud. And now we may see some of that come back on prem in the actual offices. So that way they're in control of their data. They run they don't have to pay for tokens because they're running the model on their own hardware. The only cost is the electricity and the computing, the computers that they have to run those models. So getting kind of lost in the sauce with the AI talk, but we are seeing a little bit of a shift. And right now, a lot of these companies are running their own open source AI models. But the problem is the best open source models are from China. So for NVIDIA and Palantir to partner up to make a nice quality open source AI model, that's going to be huge in my opinion, because there's growing demand for companies to host and run their own models rather than giving all their data and information to Claude and having them run it, because it's expensive and you're giving away potentially your edge in your business. So that was a nice partnership that was announced. So we'll see how that progresses. I did double my position in Palantir over the last couple of weeks when it was on a treacherous slide, and it did jump after this partnership news. I don't know if it was because of that news or it was just the sellers had enough, and we came down to a appealing level valuation wise. So that was some moves that I made, doubling Palantir position. I also have been adding to Microsoft, Amazon, and Google over these last couple of weeks. Those names looked appealing as well. Meta was a great buy. Meta's up about 20%. I didn't buy any under 600, but I do think there's a potential for Meta to get a little pullback, and I think that's a great long-term buy. Meta under 600 bucks. Did some dollar cost averaging into the triple Qs, and then I did start a new position in Micron. Based on what I just said, I do think the RAM story and the build out for AI, people are going to be needing much more computing for themselves, for their devices. And I think this RAM shortage has a little bit more legs to run here. I don't think it's going to be quite the short cycle that we've seen in the past with memory names. So some interesting developments in AI, and the market is adjusting according to that. And now we'll see if there's another shift back to the other side over these next couple of months. But I do think this was some big developments in AI. That being said, all the flagship models just came out with their updated versions. GPT 5.6, Claude is out with Fable, and then Grok, I think, also upgraded there. And we haven't heard anything from Gemini. So I think when they come out with something, that could also be an appealing opportunity for these large companies. So it's going to change week to week, month to month, but interesting developments going on there. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the charts. I got to pull this up here. The S&P near its all-time high. Let's pull it up. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. Really slow. All right, come on, computer. See, this is why we need more memory. We need more RAM so these computers aren't so slow. All right, so S&P near all-time high at around 7,600, doing very strong there. The Nasdaq is down a little bit more than the S&P, so we have a little bit of divergence here. Nasdaq is still only down 3% from its all-time high. So everything's looking pretty good when it comes to the markets. Some individual names. Let's take a look at Palantir. We're still way down from the all-time high of 207, but we got to a pretty juicy level here at 107. We'll see where we go from here. We've seen some nice runs from Palantir in the past, and then we've just continued to sell off. But I do think under around 120 and below, we're getting a lot more reasonable on the valuation for Palantir. This is still a very phenomenally run business, and the revenue's growing at a nice clip, and it's only $300 billion. So I think there's some room there if it wants to keep going up to the upside. Google just kind of stuck in the mud here, not doing a whole lot. Same thing with Amazon, not a whole lot going on. Amazon did have a nice bounce from 225, but we could see some resistance here at 250. And within the next couple of weeks, we're going to start to get some earnings. That'll be the next catalyst to either push these names back to the upside or maybe get a reason for a sell-off. Microsoft, not doing a whole lot. We were looking real nice on this bounce from 350 up to 460, and then a treacherous slide. So I could see a case for either way here. So we'll have to wait and see. Tesla kind of stuck in the mud here, not doing a whole lot, just chopping sideways, but holding up pretty well. They did have their deliveries last week, and the deliveries came in a little bit better than expected. Still waiting to hear news on Robotaxi. I think no news is good news, because typically if something goes wrong with Tesla, it's always in the headlines. So I think the fact that we haven't heard anything is a good sign. And NVIDIA, I was really hoping we can get down under 190 to scoop up some more NVIDIA. Who knows? This is a nice resistance area here at 210, so maybe we get another pullback here, but this name just so fundamentally strong. I don't quite see the reason for a big sell-off here. Micron, we are down 21% quickly after its earnings, but when we zoom out, this is nothing here. So my next buy target on Micron will be around 800 bucks if we can get that. Some of the names like SpaceX, ugly chart here. It's going to be very interesting what happens with SpaceX. They're going to have some unlocks coming up. I would like to buy under 120 if we can get there. Who knows what the market will look like then, but just not a lot going on here with the name. Super rich valuation, great company, but I got to get it for the right price. DRAM, this is an ETF for all the memory names. Still looks very, very good long term, but we are down around 20%, similar to Micron. Let's see here. Some other names, Marvell, we talked about it. Again, these charts, it doesn't look like much of a pullback, but Marvell's quickly down 30%, but that's nothing based on the run that it's had. So I'm not touching any of these hot, high-flying names, but there's definitely some interesting pullbacks that we're getting on some names that have a lot of buzz around them. AMD doing great. Let's take a look at Meta. So this was a great buying opportunity in this box. Just didn't, I was too busy buying other names that I like a little bit more, but anytime Meta's under 600 bucks, I think that is a quality purchase for the long term. Another name that's getting really beaten up here is Netflix. I've had this box drawn out for a long time. I don't know if I have the desire to buy Netflix, but I've had this drawn out for a long time, and there is an opportunity to potentially scoop up Netflix under 70 bucks. And that, to me, seems like a good name at a good price. If you're willing to buy and hold for 10 plus years, I don't think you're going to regret buying Netflix under 70 bucks. Some interesting news on Apple. Geez, I haven't looked at this chart. So Apple did raise prices, and they were stating because of the RAM shortage that they needed to raise prices across the board. iPhones are up a couple $100. The laptops are up. Everything got about a 30% increase in price. And it was shocking that the stock dropped on that, because this is going to Apple's margin. Some of the products that they raised, they didn't need to raise. So this is going to their bottom line, which is great. I understand the computers that have a lot of RAM, that makes sense, raise prices on it, because RAM has gone up 200, 300% this year. But some of their other devices like an iPad and AirPods, there's no substantial RAM in there that justifies the price increase. So that's going to go to their margin. And this is just such a well-run business, and the consumers are going to pay that. When you're buying an iPhone every 2 years, if it's 1,500 bucks, 1,700 bucks, people are going to buy it. So rightfully so, the market quickly bought that up, and we're at all-time highs. Let's see. I think that's about it. We do have some earnings coming up. We've got ASML, TSM, and Netflix. So Netflix will be the big name to watch this week. But I think that's going to be it for this week's stock market update. All right, everybody. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. Peace out.